Welcome to Fast Keto. I'm your host, Ketogenic Girl. Did you know that your body can actually be either a sugar burner or a fat burner? On this podcast, we talk all about how to make your body a fat-burning, fat-fueled machine and engaging your full metabolic flexibility. I'm Vanessa Spina. I am a sport nutrition specialist, a biomedical science student at U of T, and I am the author of the best-selling cookbook Keto Essentials, available on Amazon, and creator of the Ketogenic Girl Challenge program. And I am obsessed with optimizing our health through all these different biohacks, ketogenesis, intermittent fasting, all of these amazing tools that center around making the body a fat-adapted, fat-fueled machine. With this in mind, I present interviews to you with biomedical scientists, physicians, and people from all around the world who have experienced remarkable results from following a low-carb or ketogenic diet and getting their body into ketogenesis. So I hope you guys enjoyed these interviews with this goal in mind. Hey guys, welcome back to Fast Keto. I'm so excited for this episode because today we are going to talk about probably the most important discovery when it comes to obesity research ever. And I know that sounds like a big claim, but it truly is. It is the protein leverage hypothesis discovered by professors Dr. David Robbenheimer and Dr. Steven Simpson, whom I just finished interviewing, and that episode is going to be out on Monday. You've probably heard of protein leverage from Dr. Ted Naiman, who has really been a champion of their work and has really worked hard to help explain some of the concepts and the insights that these two professors have uncovered in their research. And today's episode is just going to be a little bit of a primer to prepare you for Monday's episode and talk about the hypothesis and some of the concepts that we're going to discuss more in depth on Monday's episode. But I'm so excited for this episode on Monday. I don't think I have ever been more excited about any episode of Fast Keto. And so, as I like to do for some of these more in-depth episodes, is do a primer for them on the Thursday episode, because it's really fun to get to talk about some of these key takeaways and insights that come out of these interviews. So I can't wait to get into it with you guys. Today we're going to talk all about the most important concept in obesity research that has ever been discovered by scientists, and you will understand why when we get into it on the episode today. You guys know that I am a huge data nerd, and I absolutely love using technology to get feedback and insight on my blood sugar, on my ketones, on my heart rate, so many different amazing tools. One of the tools I've used that's been the most insightful has been a continuous glucose monitor. You may have heard of a CGM in the past few years. They've been gaining in popularity. It's basically a device that you wear, and it gives you real-time feedback any time of the day, at any point after, before a meal, before exercise. You can check what your blood sugar is doing. And for me, wearing a device like this was so insightful into learning how my body actually responds to foods without having to prick my finger all day long. I was able to just use it, know that it was on, and any time throughout the day, I could just check and see what my blood glucose was doing. And also, I could track trends and see how exercise and different meals were impacting my blood sugar. Now, one of the best ones that I recommend is by Nutrisense. You can get it directly by going to their website, and they also have one of the best app experiences for tracking blood sugar data and things like meals, ketone measurements, and even stress events in your life. Only Nutrisense pairs every user with a registered dietitian who's been trained to read metabolic data and make really wise, insightful suggestions. Nutrisense helps people use this technology more successfully to meet your health and fitness goals. Now, one of the things they're all about is listening to your body with technology, because we all have unique and different reactions to different foods, different macronutrients, exercise, and just life. And it's really important to know what habits and go-to meals are really optimal for you, and wearing a CGM from NutriSense can really, really help with this. So if you go and try them out, there is a discount code for listeners of Fast Keto. It is Ketogenic Girl. And if you go to nutrisense.io and sign up, you will receive $25 off any of your first month of trying out NutriSense. Again, the code for that is Ketogenic Girl, all one word, and the website is nutrisense.io. Go and check it out. Let me know your feedback, your data, your insights. I would absolutely love to hear how you're doing with it. All right, you guys, here we are at the start of June. It is Thursday, the 10th of June, and summer has officially started. I hope you guys are having a nice start to summer. Things have been changing. Things have been opening up. Life is getting back to somewhat normal and perhaps a new normal, but it's been really, really nice to see some of that opening up and going back to normal life. It definitely has been opening up where we are right now, and it's a great time of the year, spring, summer. It's just an amazing time, and I hope that you guys are getting a really nice start to your summer season out there. We had Memorial Day weekend recently, and that just always kicks things off, and it's just such an awesome time of the year. So I hope you guys are all doing really well. I am doing awesome myself. We are just at 36 weeks right now, so about 4 weeks until our little guy is due here, and feeling awesome. I'll do an episode all about that more in detail for you guys who've been asking, but my health is just awesome. My sleep is awesome. Baby and I are doing great. He's just growing so well, and I feel fantastic, and I didn't expect to. I thought, that I would be struggling, in this last 8 months, but I just feel great. Really can't say it enough. And I'm just so happy to be able to keep doing these episodes and interviews, and I'm really excited for the content that's going to be coming out in the next several months. I've gotten to interview some really amazing people, and the episode that I am probably the most excited about that I've ever gotten to do on this podcast is coming out on Monday. I just got to interview, as I mentioned, Dr. David Robbenheimer and Dr. Stephen Simpson. And they wrote a book called Eat Like the Animals. They also wrote another book as well. And you've probably heard of their work because it has been popularized more recently by Dr. Ted Naiman. And he has really done an amazing job of conveying some of the concepts that these two professors uncovered. They are biologists, and they started out by studying insects, locusts in particular. And they learned some amazing things when they were studying these insects. They also studied animals, and then they also studied humans to confirm their findings. And they came up with this concept that I refer to as the most important discovery ever made in obesity and nutrition research, specifically really when it comes to obesity, because we're not talking about longevity here or fertility here. We're talking about obesity in particular, and their findings are incredibly powerful. And it's a big reason why Dr. Ted Naiman has devoted a lot of his work and efforts just to, getting their information out into the world. And they really are brilliant scientists, and the findings that they came to, discovering these different patterns in their research is really fascinating. And you can read all about it in their book, Eat Like the Animals. They talk about every study that they did. And, they're still working on groundbreaking research right now, which we talk about in the interview. But on Monday's episode, we really get to hear directly from them, what they learned in their research and what those implications mean. And it's very, very specific to obesity. And the whole idea of protein leverage is where we can start. But their concept is that we all have certain drives and certain appetites for different macronutrients and micronutrients, but there is something that we have sort of missed when looking at the obesity epidemic. And a lot of our, research and discussion has all been looking at fat and carbohydrate consumption and overeating fat and carb as, having these uncontrollable appetites when it comes to energy, to fats and carbohydrates, as the root cause of the obesity epidemic. But it isn't actually the root cause, and their research actually flipped this on its head, because the root cause is actually our appetite for protein. And it's really, really fascinating because we don't have a storage site on our bodies for protein. And what we get from protein is two main things. It's amino acids, many of them which we cannot make on our own, and nitrogen, which we also cannot make on our own. And yet we need it every day, but we can't store it. We can store an unlimited amount of energy, fat and carbohydrates. We can store tons of glucose in our liver and our muscles, and we can store all the fat in the world in our fat cells, but we cannot store nitrogen and we cannot store amino acids in large amounts. So every day we have a drive for protein, and it is so strong that what they observed first in the locusts is that locusts will overeat fat and, in the locust case, energy from carbohydrates. Locusts will overeat carbohydrates if they have to in order to get that protein need met. And they will do it at actually great risk to themselves, because they will delay this period, this molting period, where they are much more susceptible or vulnerable to predators in order to get enough protein. But they also will become obese. So the locusts that they had on this particular high carb, low protein diet became obese, and their skeleton is on the outside. So they're kind of like these, skinny fat or toffee. They, mentioned it's sort of like being a really obese person in a suit of armor. But the locusts actually became obese, overeating carbs just to get their protein needs met. So they risked their lives and they became obese in order to get enough protein. And the locusts that were on the low carb diets, they actually got so much protein that they became too lean to really survive very long. So this whole concept of protein leverage, or the protein leverage hypothesis, is that animals or humans or insects will overeat energy from either carbs and fat or both in order to get enough protein. And the root cause of the obesity epidemic is not this overeating of the fat and carbohydrates, but it's actually protein dilution. And the protein in our diet has been diluted from about 14% down to about 12.5%. So only a 1.5% difference causes us as humans to overeat energy calories just to get our protein every day. And this protein drive is the strongest. The appetite for the third macronutrient, protein, is the root cause and the protein dilution of overeating fat and carb. And so their idea is that if you prioritize protein, if you are someone battling with obesity and being overweight, then you will no longer have to overeat energy calories from fat and carbohydrate, because you're getting your nutrient needs met. You're getting that protein, those amino acids and nitrogen that you cannot get from your own body. Now, if people do extended fasting, there is this mechanism you've probably heard of called autophagy that switches on. And the reason that autophagy switches on is because of this protein drive, is because if we don't have protein coming in externally, then we have to break down existing proteins in our cells including a lot of misfolded proteins. So when our cells translate and transcribe protein and print new proteins, there is an error rate. And this autophagy, it prioritizes those misfolded proteins. It takes them down, collects them in this sort of like little, I guess you could say, a recycling bag. It goes around the cell, it clears up all the cellular debris, all those misfolded proteins, and it takes them basically to this little recycling plant where it breaks them back down into individual amino acids, and then it can use those amino acids to make new proteins. And Nobel Prize winner Yoshinori Ohsumi, he did this groundbreaking work on autophagy, and he found that it was anywhere between 200 to 300 grams of protein a day that our cells were recycling in order to make up that protein difference if you don't have any protein coming in. So this is why autophagy really works, in my opinion, or gets turned on and, really accelerated. There's autophagy that happens when we exercise, and there's autophagy that, occurs for different reasons, but I believe the main reason why this autophagy is, really ramped up during extended fasting is because our protein requirements are persistent. They never go away. Every single day we have to get protein because we have to get nitrogen and amino acids, and we cannot make them on our own. We can recycle existing ones by breaking down old protein, but eventually you get to the point where you're just going to have to utilize your own protein, and that's why lean body mass can occur with extended fasting. So anyways, that was a bit of a digression to talk about autophagy, but it really just highlights how much we need to get nitrogen and amino acids every day because we have no storage site. We can store some amino acids in our muscles, but we cannot make nitrogen and we cannot make amino acids. There are 9 that are essential that we cannot make, and so we have to get from our food sources. So this hypothesis is just absolutely brilliant, and it really explains why we have this drive to overeat. And I experienced so much of it in my own life. When I was vegan, I was barely eating protein, and I was not really eating fats, which is another essential macronutrient. I was mostly just eating carbohydrate. And so I was vastly overeating energy from carbohydrates, and I became obese in terms of my body fat percentage being close to 40% because I had this drive every day to get protein. And so I would get these little bits of protein from all the carbs that I was eating. And it would mean that I often went to bed still feeling unsatisfied, still feeling hungry, even though I had been eating all day and, doing a lot of caloric restriction during that time as well was just, it felt like misery because, I still wasn't getting enough protein. And then I still, was having these intense cravings for what I didn't realize was protein. And I started piecing it together when Dr. Ted Naiman started presenting a lot of this work. And I started also looking into umami, which is it's a sort of a 5th flavor sense that we have in terms of taste receptors that we have for protein. And so if you don't get enough protein, you will tend to have a lot of cravings for cheesy foods, and foods that have MSG added. So that's a lot of packaged like Doritos types of tortilla chips and those things that have a cheesy coating on them. They replicate this sense of umami, which makes us feel like we're getting protein. And you would get it in sort of trace amounts. And also MSG, monosodium glutamate, which is added to a lot of fast food, but it's also added to a lot of our packaged foods. And it has a lot of different names, just like sugar has a lot of different names to sort of hide the fact that it's in foods. So it's called hydrolyzed yeast protein and yeast extract, and it's got a lot of different names, but it makes food taste more satisfying than it actually is because it gives off this fake sense of consuming protein and Robbenheimer and Simpson actually talk about it on the podcast, how they did this actual experiment called the protein decoy experiment, which is really interesting, and we get into that. But it wasn't until I started keto and then eventually did my high protein experiment, which was about 3 years ago now, that I felt for the first time in my life satisfied. And I've talked about this on so many solo casts about protein and my high protein experiment, how it was the first time in my life that I finally no longer thought about food. And my obsession and fixation on what I was going to eat next completely vanished and has stayed that way since that experiment, even though I don't eat those high protein levels anymore. I believe it was the optimal tool for myself and for anyone who is overweight or has a body fat percentage that is too high to be considered metabolically healthy. And I overate protein around 160 to 200 grams. I say I overate on it because I don't need that much anymore. But at the time, my body did need that much because I had spent, almost 2 decades being a vegetarian, and part of that being a vegan and fruitarian. I was hardly getting any protein at all. And so I had to replenish all of that protein in my muscles, in my bones. I had to replenish that lean mass and all those amino acids I had been missing out on for so many years, not realizing that as a vegetarian and vegan, I needed to do way, way more to get enough protein. And I believe it's probably possible to get enough protein on a plant-based diet, although proteins, the amino acids found in plants are completely different from the amino acids found in animals. So there's more sophistication that goes into it. And it's kind of a privileged thing to be able to be vegan and also get all the protein that you need, because you need to take a lot of supplements and do, proper allocation of, different macronutrients in order to make sure that you get complete proteins. And, you can definitely do it, but it is much more difficult. And for me, being vegan and vegetarian only made me obese because all I was eating was carbs, and I was overeating all the energy in order to meet my protein goal. And when I started keto, I introduced some poultry and fish back into my life and eggs, and then eventually went completely, back to being an omnivore. And then 3 years ago, I did my high protein experiment, and I had experienced some, greater satiety on keto, which is why I wanted to keep doing it. I wanted to keep adding in more animal foods. But when I did this high protein experiment, it was hard to eat that much protein in a day. I had to add in, like meat sticks, meat jerky, sugar-free meat jerky. I had to add in some protein, shakes and things to make sure that I was getting all the protein in. And, I tried this experiment of just eating protein, 160 to 200 grams, and I got so lean, I got too lean. And I've also mentioned that before. So I feel so passionate about this because I've experienced it for myself, how incredibly effective it can be. And I'm also passionate about it because for about 2 decades and maybe my whole life until I did this protein experiment, I was eating a high carb diet until keto, and I felt obsessed with food most of my life. And so I can relate to anyone who feels obsessed with food, who is food fixated, who deals with, binging or any associated issues with being obsessed with food and thinking about food all the time and spending so much of your energy thinking about food. To go from that to experiencing the opposite, where I have to make myself eat, and I still have that experience now, where I have to make sure that I get enough calories in each day and eat twice a day. I never think about food. I have to make myself think about food. And to experience those extremes, as I always say, it's going from, living to eat to eating to live. It's such a profound shift in your quality of life. And it's a huge reason why I'm so passionate about this, because I want everyone who struggles with food addiction, with carb addiction, sugar addiction, with food fixation, with being obsessed with food, looking at food menus, looking at, food pictures at restaurants before you go to them, and just feeling like your life revolves around food, to living a life that is so much richer and fuller and free of that. I really want everyone to be able to experience that and know that it's possible for you, and if you are dealing with food fixation, food obsession, because the solution is very, very clear. And thanks to these incredible scientists and their protein leverage hypothesis, we're able to understand why. This episode is brought to you by Athletic Greens, the most comprehensive daily nutritional beverage that I have ever tried. Life is stressful, let's face it, and it can be difficult to maintain optimal nutrition while juggling our businesses, our families, everything that we're doing. We have busy schedules, sometimes we're not sleeping well, and we just want to get the maximum amount of nutrients from our food. That's why I found Athletic Greens to be a life-changing nutritional habit. They have this amazing daily all-in-one superfood powder that you can just add to water and mix, and it makes a delicious drink. It is the easiest and the most delicious habit that you can add to your daily routine, and they really make it easy to get your optimal nutrition in on a daily basis by just giving you one thing with all the best things. I love finding hacks and ways to optimize my nutrition, and doing a keto diet or a carnivore diet, sometimes I don't know if I'm really getting all the nutrients that I possibly can. And I found adding in this beverage in the morning is such a great hack to make sure that I am not missing out on any nutrients. And it has become even more important to me in the last 8 months. I really love Athletic Greens because it actually tastes delicious. You just add 1 scoop of Athletic Greens to a glass of water. It has 75 vitamins, minerals from whole food sourced ingredients, and it has a multivitamin, multi-mineral, probiotic, greens superfood blend, and more. And they all work together to fill any nutritional gaps in the diet, to increase energy and focus and help with digestion, which supports a healthy immune system. I really have found it to be so helpful for digestion, keeping me regular. Having a probiotic and a multivitamin all-in-one makes it so easy. Athletic Greens obsessively improves their one holistic formula based on the latest research, and they have produced 53 different versions over the last decade, and they are continually working on a new version all of the time. They invest in the most absorbable and natural sources of each ingredient, and they go above and beyond in third-party testing, which you guys know is so important to me, to ensure that customers continue to receive the highest quality and best daily nutritional habit on the planet. Right now, Athletic Greens is doubling down on supporting your immune system. They are offering my audience a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase if you visit my link today. You'll basically never have to buy vitamin D. Covering your bases with Athletic Greens makes investing in your energy, immunity, and gut health simple, tasty, and efficient. You can just visit athleticgreens.com/ketogenicgirl and join health experts, athletes, and health-conscious go-getters around the world who make a daily commitment to their health every day. Again, just visit athleticgreens.com/ketogenicgirl and get your free year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs today. Try it out and let me know how you like it. So I get so passionate about this. I just did an Instagram story before I was recording this, and I said, I am having one of those moments where I feel like I was born to do this. I'm in the exact right place to be able to do this. And I feel so passionate about it. And I feel so on purpose that I'm living my life getting to interview experts like this and bring their incredible insights and knowledge to this huge audience that we have on the podcast and through, social media and all of this, because I know that it is helping people. And it makes me so happy, and it gives me such a sense of meaning and happiness. And all of the training that I did, media training, when I used to host and anchor a financial news show and interview all these financial experts, and going back to school a few years ago to study biochem and biomedical science, all of it has led up to this. And I feel so incredibly thankful that I followed my bliss. And this is my bliss. I feel like I was meant to be doing this. And nothing makes me happier than when I hear from you guys that you've listened to something on the podcast, or you've changed your lifestyle, your approach to eating, or you're doing high protein because you've been listening to this podcast. And I've been putting out this message ever since I did that high protein experiment a few years ago. But cautiously, I would say I've done, streaks where I really, really focus on high protein. And, I also want to make sure that people know that this is a tool for obesity. And we are all optimizing for different goals. I did this post earlier this week, and I asked you guys to drop an emoji for what it is that you are optimizing for right now. And I had 9 different goals: fat loss, lifespan extension, mental health and well-being, disease prevention, optimal health, strength and body recomposition, sleep and recovery, metabolic fitness, and managing or improving disease. And I probably could have added fertility on there and different things as well. But there were so many variations in the replies. There were a couple hundred replies that people said, lifespan extension, sleep and recovery, metabolic fitness, disease prevention. Everybody had different goals or a different combination of goals. So, when I talk about high protein, it's for the goal of obesity and fat loss and body recomposition and strength. It's not for the goal of sleep optimization or fertility or hormone balancing. But people do get healthier if they are obese and they get down to a healthier optimal body fat percentage, and when they gain lean mass and muscle, that metabolic markers improve. It's kind of a byproduct. And so many people say, I came to keto for the weight loss and I stayed for all the other benefits I got. And, this primarily, high protein is not a tool for optimizing lifespan. It's not a tool for optimizing sleep necessarily, or fertility, or hormones. It can be helpful for reproduction, as Dr. Robin Hyburn Simpson found that high protein diets are extremely helpful for reproduction. But this is really mainly a tool for obesity. And it also doesn't mean that you have to go low fat or live your whole life low fat, but it is a tool that you can use, an extremely powerful tool that you can use for obesity and also for food obsession or food fixation or food addiction. So, those are my personal issues that I've dealt with in my life. I haven't really dealt with poor sleep very much. I haven't really dealt with disease very much. I haven't really dealt with, insomnia or other problems like that. But my issues have been obesity and food obsession. So this is the tool for that. And it's the most powerful tool that I have found. And I tend to focus on it a lot on the podcast because not only have I experienced it, but I know there are millions of people in the world. We have an obesity epidemic that we are facing. And, we are trying to solve this obesity epidemic and make sure that people stop suffering not only from obesity, but all the associated chronic diseases that come from being obese and necessarily metabolically unhealthy at the same time. So I'm not saying that people who are overweight are all metabolically unhealthy. Some people who are larger in their bodies have more lean mass and have a lower body fat percentage. But that's why the scale, it just really doesn't tell us very much. I posted something this week as well, which was from one of the members in my coaching program. She originally started on the 28-day challenge, and then we've sort of been tweaking things as she goes along. And she actually got 2 body scans done. And in between, we tweaked her macros to do a higher protein approach and brought her protein up above 40%. And again, as a temporary tool to get her body fat percentage down. And when she went back for her second DEXA scan, her weight had gone up by almost 2 pounds. And she said she almost fainted when she saw her weight had gone up because, for the past 7 weeks, she had been doing this higher protein, lower fat approach. And when she got the body scan done, what was amazing is she actually lost body fat. She went from total body fat percentage of 35.2% down to 32%, which is huge. She lost, in terms of her actual body fat, she went from 46.7 pounds of body fat down to 43.1 pounds of body fat. So she lost 3.6 pounds of body fat, and she gained lean mass or muscle, and her lean mass also improved. It's actually just amazing. She was able to gain lean mass, and she went from 86.1 pounds of lean body mass to 91.5. So quite a big jump there in lean mass, which is similar to what I personally saw. I gained 8 pounds of lean mass when I did my high protein experiment and I wasn't weight training. This person in the group also is doing resistance training. And so I'm not surprised at all that extra protein, doing a lower fat, and, really, really focusing on that resistance training made such a huge difference. And if she had only relied on the scale, she would have seen that her weight went up by almost 2 pounds and would have thought, I'm doing everything wrong, I'm getting fatter. And yet she knew, she could feel it. And a lot of people have this experience with body recomposition, which I talk about a lot, and the importance of getting body scans done is a lot of people have this experience where they don't see the scale move, but they can see and feel the difference, and their clothes are fitting better and they are toning. But when you lose body fat but gain muscle, those differences are offset. And like in this case with this person in my group who shared her DEXA scan results in our coaching group, you can see that she lost a lot of body fat, but because she gained muscle on the outside, on the scale, it looked like she had put on weight. So it's so important to distinguish between fat loss and weight loss, because we don't just want to lose weight. We want to lose fat and we want to gain that vital lean mass, that muscle mass that helps us to burn more calories at rest, be able to, eat even more calories if we want to, be able to stay fit, be able to be strong, and be able to maintain that strength and fitness as we continue to grow in life and get older, because protein needs go way up, in our later stages of life, because it's harder for us to keep and maintain our muscle mass. So back to the protein leverage hypothesis. Basically, in a nutshell, it is, if you have a diet that is low in protein relative to fat and carbohydrate, you will tend to overeat fat and carbohydrate to meet your protein target and therefore become obese. You will overeat on energy calories to get your protein. If you have a diet higher in protein compared to fat and carbohydrates, you will undereat fat and carbohydrates and get lean. So you will undereat energy calories because you've already gotten your protein needs met, and those are your nutrient needs. This is the protein leverage hypothesis in a nutshell, and it is so incredibly powerful. And some other really amazing discoveries that these two scientists made involve our 5 different appetites. And we have different appetites for those 5 are fat, carbohydrate, protein, sodium, and calcium. And they believe there could be more out there, but we have these 5 main appetite drivers. And it makes so much sense, because when we look at the biochemical processes that happen in our body, we need calcium channels where calcium goes in and out of muscle cells in order for action potentials to happen. That's for our heart, which is a muscle, to beat, and other muscles as well, for them to have action potentials. We need calcium. So it's not just in our bones. We need calcium for our heart to beat. And we need sodium because every single cell in our bodies has, these sodium potassium channels that basically are these, ions and electrons. And so so is calcium. But these ions basically are like little batteries where we have positive and negative ions, and that's the sodium and the potassium that exchange. And so when they exchange and potassium goes out and sodium goes in, glucose can come in, other nutrients can take a ride in on those channels and get into the cell, because each cell membrane is made of fat. And so, anything that is aquaphobic or fatty based can get in, but anything that is more aqueous or water based cannot cross through that fatty lipid membrane. And so it needs these channels to open up. And that's why sodium is so important. And Robbenheimer and Simpson were studying sodium in the context of high carb. And so they found that people will tend to overeat sodium when they eat a lot of packaged foods. We didn't really talk about it so much in the context of low carb, but it is one of the 5 main appetites that we have and one of the 5 main drivers that we have. So someone who is dealing with, thinking about food all the time, maybe because the protein isn't being met, the sodium isn't being met, the calcium isn't being met, these vital nutrients that, we have to get, they're not being met. And so that can make people crave salty things. It can make people crave cheesy things. It can make people crave, all kinds of things, including even sweet things and sugar, because maybe that sugary food is helping you to get some protein or helping you to get some nutrient or calcium. If it's ice cream, maybe it's actually a calcium appetite that you are trying to resolve. If you're always craving a lot of high-fat dairy, it could be calcium and it could be protein. But knowing that, calcium, sodium, and protein are such appetite drivers that, it could be the reason why someone might be craving these foods that are making them overweight, and they're having a really hard time not eating those foods because those nutrient needs aren't being met. So supplementing with sodium, with calcium, and prioritizing protein are basically the key, the answer to resolving overeating. And I've definitely found it out for myself. I don't think that everyone necessarily needs to do a high protein experiment. I did it because I'm always experimenting on myself, but prioritizing protein is important. So making sure that every meal is built around protein, that, are you getting 30 grams of protein at every meal, which Dr. Don Layman and Dr. Gabrielle Lyon have, mentioned is optimal for muscle protein synthesis, because you get this leucine threshold cross, which is somewhere between 2 to 3 grams of leucine, triggers muscle protein synthesis. So that works out to about 30 grams of protein 3 times a day, or 45 grams of protein twice a day. If you make sure that your meal has, that adequate protein built into it, and the protein levels can be different for different people. I have a macro calculator at ketogenicgirl.com, but you can use it if you go to ketogenicgirl.com. You can look up the menu and look up calorie calculator, and it'll give you an estimate of your calories for maintenance and for weight loss. And then you can click on the macros and you can choose, a high protein keto diet or the protein to energy PE diet by Dr. Ted Naiman. You can choose from those different variations and you can get an idea of what your macros could look like. A lot of doctors that I've had on the podcast have recommended 1 gram of protein per pound of optimal body weight, but usually in the context of resistance training. So that could be too much for someone who is not active at all, is more sedentary and not doing any resistance training, and could potentially cause blood glucose to rise too much, because as we talked about, protein cannot be stored on the body. So if more protein is consumed than the body can use or needs to use, then it will be converted into a storable form, which would be glucose, possibly fat, but that's probably the least used pathway, more likely glucose. And that could cause potentially people seeing a slightly higher blood glucose, although you wouldn't see blood glucose spikes like you do with carbohydrate, because protein is metabolized so slowly over 4 to 5 hours. But, if you're interested in figuring out what macros could be good for you, I would highly recommend to go to ketogenicgirl.com, click on the calorie calculator, put in all your stats, and you can also do the macro calculator there, and it'll give you a good idea. If you are someone who is very active in doing resistance training, then 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight makes sense. And if you're wondering what that looks like in terms of food, a standard portion of chicken breast, 1 serving, 1 chicken breast usually has about 30 grams of protein in it. Same for any sort of palm-shaped size of protein, whether it's, egg whites or eggs or steak or pork or turkey, any kind of food that is lean, a lean protein without tons and tons of fat in it, about the size of your palm, that's going to be about 30 grams of protein. So you make sure that you prioritize protein, you build your plate around that protein, serving, and you will find that it will be difficult to overeat protein. As I always say, those steakhouses that give away the free, 40-ounce steak, they know that it's very hard to overeat protein because you can't store it. And, you get to the point where you're just literally repulsed by eating more protein because there's nowhere to stash it. So, you have these sort of feedback from your body that says we've had enough. And if you are not getting enough protein and it's not being prioritized, and instead, energy or calories are being prioritized, then it's going to be more difficult to actually feel satisfied unless you add in a lot of indigestible fiber. And Robbenheimer and Simpson found that fiber is kind of an overlooked, I guess, I don't know if you can call it a nutrient, but an overlooked part of our diet for people who are, looking to feel full from the stomach stretch receptors. And that if we don't eat a lot of fiber in our diets naturally through eating complex carbohydrates or vegetables, that we will tend to we can, overeat because we don't receive that fullness, signal until it's too late. So that's kind of where we ended off the episode. But I am so excited for you guys to listen to this episode out on Monday. It was just absolutely thrilling to get to interview Dr. David Robbenheimer and Dr. Steven Simpson about their hypothesis, which, as I said, now it's been proven through so much evidence, it really isn't much of a hypothesis anymore. But I truly believe that they solved the obesity epidemic theoretically with their research, and that the more we spread this information, the more people can be helped, and the more people battling the scourge of obesity, can be supported. So if you know of anyone that you think would benefit from this information, please do share this episode with them. And the episode coming out on Monday, it's just going to blow your mind how logical it is and how much sense it makes. And I'm going to keep sharing as much as I can about it because it's been so powerful in my own life. You can go back and look through episodes of Fast Keto. I've done whole episodes just on how I completely ended my food fixation and food addiction with my high protein experiment. I've done lots and lots of episodes on it, and I've interviewed many protein scientists, including Dr. Don Layman. He's actually coming back on the podcast very soon, and Dr. Ted Naiman, and Dr. Jose Antonio, Dr. Bill Campbell. Lots of those episodes, and I'm planning on putting them out this summer for the Thursday episodes when I'm not recording because I'm otherwise entertaining my newborn baby. So I'll be putting out some of those episodes because I think they are must listens and really important episodes that have come out in the past few years, all about protein leverage. So I'm definitely going to be focusing on those ones in the Thursday episodes. So if you miss them, just stay tuned because they will be coming out again on the Thursday episodes this summer. All right, you guys, I hope you enjoyed the episode today. It was so much fun to be here with you and to talk about this topic. I think it's so important. It's so powerful. It's just life-changing for so many people. And it's just really incredible work, really astounding, groundbreaking work that these scientists have done, and I hope that they get all the credit that they deserve for it. So I hope that you get to listen to Monday's episode. I can't wait to hear what you thought of it. Please tag me in your stories. Let me know what your insights were, where you're listening from. I love, love, love hearing from you guys and seeing where you're tuning in from. If you ever have a moment to leave me a rating or review on iTunes, it really is the best way to support this show, and it means so much to me, and it means that I can continue bringing these kinds of scientists and doctors and experts to you to talk about their research and their findings. So it means the absolute world to me if you are able to take a moment to leave me an iTunes rating and review. And it keeps us, up there in the charts. This podcast really has an amazing audience and really incredible listeners, and I really appreciate each and every one of you. And if you want to check out the higher protein keto meal plans that I have, they are at ketogenicgirl.com. They're called the Phase 2 Higher Protein Keto Plans, and they can be done on their own, or they can be done after a first round of the original 28-day challenge. But all of the meal plans that I have at ketogenicgirl.com come with my support and coaching in our members coaching group, so that I can be there to support you, to answer any questions that you have about keto, about high protein. And it is extremely effective. And these are the meal plans that I personally used in the past when I was doing my high protein experiment, and I got extremely lean, the leanest that I've ever been. And also what I plan to use postpartum, when I'll be focusing on getting lean again. I still feel like I've been maintaining a great level of leanness even throughout pregnancy because I prioritize protein, but I do still eat high fat. And high fat, high protein is kind of what I've been doing, because protein needs go up when you are pregnant, and it's going to be the same when I'm breastfeeding. But eventually, when I get to the point when I want to focus on getting back to that leanness that I was at before, which I know I will be using these meal plans, and that's the Phase 2 higher protein keto meal plan. So you can join me when I do that, and check those out at ketogenicgirl.com. I just want to thank each of you for listening. I hope that you are having a wonderful week. And I am sending you all so much love. I hope you're having a wonderful day. And thank you so much for listening. Wishing you a fat-filled rest of your day. And bye for now.
A few disclaimers. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice, as I am not a qualified healthcare provider. The information presented on this podcast is for educational purposes only. Ketogenic Girl is not qualified to provide medical advice. Consult your own physician for any medical issues that you may be having. This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to this podcast. Prior to beginning a ketogenic diet, you should undergo a full health screening with your physician to confirm that a keto diet is suitable for you, and to rule out any conditions or contraindications that may pose risks or that are incompatible with the ketogenic diet. A keto diet may or may not be appropriate for you if you have any kind of health condition, whether known to you or unknown, so you must consult your physician to find this out. Anyone under the age of 18 should consult with their physician and their parents or legal guardian.